I don't know about you guys, but 2013 was a crazy year for me. About 1 year ago, I was writing a text called Destination Number One. And the text was about answering a really provocative question. What can Bulgaria be the best in the world at? Compared to our gloomy situation where we're in, I wanted to answer this question in the most concrete manner possible. And I actually find out that what we can be the best in the world at is social innovation. Our ability to find new solutions to social problems. And boy, the timing was perfect, or at least I thought it was, because a couple of months later, I published the text online for free on the day of the last elections in Bulgaria. And shortly after that, we had protests, mainly Sofia, but as well all over the country. I brought my son to the protests, and later in the year, my daughter was born, and I actually didn't bring her to the protests because they sort of subsided, weren't that active anymore. But they raged on in so many different places around the world. We had protests in Turkey, in Egypt, in Thailand, in Venezuela, and this is Kiev, like just 1 month ago. It's like, it's hard to believe that this is in the middle of Europe, 2014. It's really a battlefield. So without a doubt, social change is back on the global agenda, but not exactly in the way that I meant while writing the text, because in the text, I was writing about social innovation. And what we see from all these events is that nobody is actually talking about innovation. Everybody is talking about revolution. And I see a problem in that. I think that social change has an image problem, because most people associate it with Guy Fawkes masks and mass protests. And during the times of Guy Fawkes, probably, the only way to really change the society, not as a whole, but a large part of society, was through conflict and war. But I think we have better ways to do it now. And as a scholar put it very nicely, the point isn't just to challenge power, it's to change it. But before we do that, we really need to do something important in advance. We need to start changing our mind about social change. We need to leave preconceived notions aside, and we need to really think what social change is about and how we perceive it. And so I decided to prepare for you today 9 ways we get social change wrong. The first one, social change is about bringing down governments and corporations, right? It's about changing the system, throwing everything all out, and just challenging them and making sure that they don't do evil things anymore. And I think there is a better way to approach that. I think social change is about doing a better job than governments and companies, not simply going against them. And I think it's a much more constructive way of changing the world. This is Caroline. She was born in a family of 3 kids with multiple disabilities, and their parents had difficulties going and doing one of the basic things they do several times a week, going shopping. So they decided to create, with the help of some other people, a shopping cart for Caroline so they could go together with her shopping. A government could have done it. They might have started a program or a legislation to get the retailers to provide such shopping carts. A company could have done it, a retailer, for example, to provide 1 or 2 carts for kids like this. But this family didn't wait for someone to do that and didn't protest and sign petitions or whatever just to make sure that the government or the companies would do their job. They just decided to do it themselves. The second way we get social change wrong is that we think social change is about having a worthy and important cause, which is true. You need to start with a worthy and important cause to make a difference. But that's clearly not enough, not in our world, I think. Social change should be more about making something that people desire, something that they get excited about, something that will make them feel special. And the example I want to give you is with Tesla. If you have only a cause, then you'll probably get out and say to people, you need to buy an electric car. You must buy an electric car because the world is going down, climate change is going to destroy us all, so you must go there, buy an electric car, and have your stake at making the world a better place. What Tesla did, and they realized that it's not enough just to make a good electric car and put it on the market. They realized that they need to make the best car on the market compared to all other cars. And there is a survey called Consumer Reports, which is really popular. Tesla was rated with the highest number of points in the entire history of Consumer Reports. So compared to any other car that is right there on the market. Because they realized that you can seduce people into change. You cannot just tell them and say you must do that. You have to make sure that they desire that they can say, I want that. Number 3, social change is about an alternative way of doing things. And I think we have a serious inferiority complex here. Because if you put it that way, that means that everything else is normal and the way it should be, and social change is sort of trying to put something new in the picture, while in fact social change is upholding values and principles that have been valid for millennia. We just need to find new ways to implement them. So I think social change is much more about the right way of doing things instead of an alternative way of doing things. The most obvious example for me is the bio and organic food industry. Here you have a small aisle in a supermarket with a sign that says organic produce. They even put 5 exclamation marks on this A4 paper, and it sounds for me really scary, like beware, this is organic produce, you might get hurt or something might happen to you. It sounds really threatening, not exactly inviting. And it's a problem because we used to eat with our grandmothers and grandfathers such food, and it's like the normal food we should eat. It shouldn't be designated to a small corner in a supermarket and treated as something exotic. We should treat it as the right food, the food we are supposed to eat. Number 4, social is about social change being an activity for our spare time. You know, it's valid for people and for companies as well. We do what we do every day, and then we come back home and then we do some more everyday stuff. And once in a week we decide to do something about, you know, making the world better or changing the world just for the fun of it. And I don't think that's right. I think that social change is about having a state of mind for a lifetime, not an activity for your spare time. And the example I want to give you is with a survey by Walden University, and the big question they asked was, what kind of social change agent are you? And one of the questions they had in the survey was, how often do you do something that to engage in positive social change? And you had like different answers, like once a year, 2-3 times a year, 2-3 times a month, more than once in a week. What is this, like a fitness program or something? Are we placing social change, you know, together with all these activities? No, it's about having a state of mind. It's not about doing something small once a week and showing off to the others that, yeah, I'm doing social change, I'm so cool. It's about deciding that you want to approach the world in such a way, so that this is your state of mind. Number 5 seems quite obvious, right? Social change is always about creating something new. Out with the old, in with the new. This is the thing that we should do and we want to do. Well, I think that we should approach it in a different way. That social change is much more about aiming to use what we have now first than just leaving it behind and doing something completely new. And the example is, for all of you coffee drinkers in the audience, I'm not one of you, but I can sort of relate to that. You probably don't know that only 0.2% of the coffee you drink is used. The rest of it is thrown away in the trash bin. And there's a guy called Günther Pauli who decided that this is not quite right. And because coffee is a natural odor killer, and a very good one, he decided that we should put waste coffee in shoes so that they don't smell like hell after, you know, hard work day or a hike in the mountains. And this is an example of using what we already have to achieve something new and not saying, this is something unusable and we cannot do anything with it. The next one also might seem pretty obvious, and it's sort of the mantra of the social change movement. We should use social change as a tool of empowering people and communities. And my problem with that is that it starts from a position of weakness. So we have some people who are incapable of doing anything somewhere in the world, and we should just go there and empower them so they can become more like us, more powerful. I believe that social change is much more about allowing people and communities to show their true power. And the difference between the two is that this starts from a position of strength. Because I believe people are powerful by design. And it's their circumstances that depend on whether they'll show this power and use this power, or that they shouldn't or wouldn't. And the example I want to give you is with Bunker Roy, who found barefoot colleges quite a number of years ago. These are colleges only for the poor in India. So for the homeless, for the illiterate, for the really desperate people. He wanted to make colleges specifically for them. And he didn't go there and empower them. He didn't give them the things they needed. He opened up a possibility for them to do what they do best, but just bring it to a new level. So they started building schools. Illiterate people, they're not professional architects, but they started building schools. It turned out that the women who were part of these small tribes and communities know a technique on how to make the roof so it doesn't leak. So he treated people as having a very, very important skills and crafts, which they have passed from generation to generation. So he started from a position of treating these people as people who are powerful. He just set up the circumstances so that they can show their true power. And later on, he actually gave them tools to make their own solar appliances. But he didn't just give solar appliances to these people. He taught them how to make them themselves. So it's another example of treating them as powerful and just helping them to level it up. Number 7, social change always starts with disruption. Always starts with something that signifies that we're done with the old system and we want to bring a new one. Well, I think that social change actually should, and it starts with understanding. And here the example is from TED, actually. This is the first TED talk that I watched. It's by the designer Philip Stark, and it still remains my favorite one. It's absolutely hilarious. If you haven't seen it, just go to TED.com, download it, or just watch it online. It's absolutely amazing. And one of the things he said in this talk is about that every generation thinks it's the last one and the best one, that everybody that was before us didn't do well enough, that we're the best, we're the last ones, so we'll do whatever we want. And he actually said that we have a different role, that people are sort of mutants, and the way life goes on and generations goes on is sort of the human mutation, which is the most beautiful thing. And we have to be good mutants. We have to do our part in bringing this whole thing together, not destroying it, but getting it through for the generations to come. So he really advocates starting with understanding what other people need, their motivations and their beliefs, and not just aiming at erasing completely what we have now. Number 8 is also kind of obvious. Social change is about helping disadvantaged people and communities, right? The bottom billion, the homeless, the conflict-ridden parts of the world. It's about helping those people. And I think we're missing a huge part of that, because social change should be about advancing all kinds of people and communities, not only the disadvantaged ones. Because then we're sort of designating social change for them. And some of you might think, well, it doesn't concern me. It's about people who live, for example, with less than $1 a day. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And we should actually do social change with all kinds of people in communities, from stockbrokers to workers in orphanage homes. And I want to show you this. This is a RV Pegaso. It's a 73-meter super yacht. And it has something to do with social change, because what's so special about it that it has a full-fledged, state-of-the-art science lab inside, which can host up to 12 scientists. And the trick is that you can rent this yacht, but only if you bring the scientists on board with you. So it's kind of a nice experience, right? You use the yacht to go places, and the scientists use the yacht to do science. So it's kind of a win-win situation. This is precisely the point. We shouldn't outcast a certain part of our population just because they're wealthy or they have at their disposal multiple material things or financial instruments. We should also find ways to include them as well, so that we have win-win-win solutions and so that we can advance all kinds of communities. Number 9, the last one, is probably the most obvious one of all. Social change is about changing the world, right? It's about doing things in a completely different way. It's about leaving the old world behind and moving into a new one. Unless if you stop treating changing the world as an end in itself, which I think is the mistake we're making. We should start treating changing the world and social change as a means to something. And for me, it's a means to creating a better quality of life. And having actually a better quality of life in the fullest sense of the word. Not only material gains and possessions or more money, but more human relationships, more strong communities, better education, better urban environments, better natural environments. So quality of life in its really the fullest sense of the term. This is Monocle magazine. I don't know if you have read it, if you know about it. When you just glance through it, you see inside glossy ads of, luxury brands, and you really start to think that this is the perfect magazine for the financial elite, for the globe-trotting people who spend a night in Adelaide, then off to Boston, and then to London, and then to Hong Kong, and then to Tokyo, and then back to Adelaide. But when you really look carefully inside, you see that this is not a magazine actually about people who have it all but still want more. You see stories about small entrepreneurs, about family companies that have been practicing things and doing their things for tens of years, maybe hundreds of years. Stories about people who are craftsmen. And then you realize that Monocle magazine is not a magazine for the rich, it's a magazine about quality of life. And if you treat social change as something separate from quality of life, you wouldn't have guessed that these people in the magazine are doing social change, but they in fact are, but they're out of this standard definition of social change, stopping at we're changing the world, full stop. If you treat it as a means to something, as a means of having quality of life, they are certainly doing social change. In the beginning of my talk, I said that we should start changing our mind about social change. But there is something even more important than that. And it is that social change itself is about changing our mind. That it doesn't start with the square or people that are protesting there. It doesn't start with the government. It doesn't start with a big company that is doing evil things. It starts with you. It starts with your own understanding of the world around you and how you perceive things that are going on. And I want to end with a quote from a recent interview with Jonathan Ive from Apple. Because he was, at the end of the interview, he was really hurrying to leave the room. And the interviewer, the journalist, wrote this is the final sentence of the article. He said that tomorrow doesn't wait for the man who defies it. Wait a minute, it's not the correct word that it was used. Actually, the last sentence of the interview was, tomorrow doesn't wait for the man who designs it. And here is the big difference for me, that social change, I believe, is really truly powerful when it creates opportunities. But in the end, of course, it's up to you to decide which version of the quote are you going to use when you start doing your small part in social change. The one that puts the blame on others, or the one that puts you on center stage. Thank you.